It's Parshas Toldos. And the Pasuk says, Vayisroitetzu abonim bekirba vatoimer im kain. Lama ze onoichi vatelech lidrosh Hashem. Vayisroitetzu. What's Vayisroitetzu? Rashi says, Al korchoch hamikra hazeh oimed darsheni. This Pasuk, whether you like it or not, begs for interpretation, because the pshat will not suffice. This pasuk asks for a drush. Why? Shesosam mahi ritzitza zoi. The pasuk doesn't explain what was this ritzitza. Ve kosav imkein lomazeh anoichi. That the pasuk says that since she's experiencing this ritzitza, she says lomazeh anoichi, and all this is hard to understand. And Rashi says, Rabbi Seinu Darshuhu Loshoin Ritza, that the word Vayisroitetzu stands for Ritza, running. That the children, the babies, the infants, the Obrim were running. Kishahoisa Iveres Al Pische Torah Shel Shem Ve'ever, when she was passing by the door of the Beis Medrash of Shem Ve'ever, Yaakov rotz umefarches lotzeis. Yaakov is attempting to get out. Oiveres al pische avodah zarah, Esav mefarches lotzeis. So that's Vayisroitetzu, that both Yaakov and Esav were running. Davar acher, another pshat, misroitetzim zeim zeh, that it's not a lotion of running, but it's a lotion of struggling, of battling, of fighting. The two were misroitzeit zeim zeh umeirivim. They were quarreling over the nachla of Shnei Olamis. They both wanted both Olamis. And then Rashi says, Vatoimer im kain godol sar ha'ibur. If the pain of pregnancy is so great, lama zeh anoichi misava umispaleles alo iroin. Why was I davening and wanting to become pregnant if this is how painful the experience is? Vatelech lidrosh lebeis midrasha shel shem lidrosh es Hashem sheyagid lo ma yehi b'sofa. Tell her what's going to be the end of the story. Now, what does Rashi mean that this pasuk begs for interpretation? Because the pasuk was soisem and doesn't explain the lomozeh anoichi. The Re'im says that since the pasuk doesn't explain what the ritzitza is, so we find it hard to understand why she's bothered to the extent that she says, why was I wanting to be pregnant? If this was a typical experience that a woman has during pregnancy, that the fetuses are kicking around, so what's the big deal? And that's why the pasuk needs to be interpreted, and Rashi interprets that there was a spiritual battle going on, and that's what made her wonder, why was I even wanting this pregnancy? So the tsar ha'ibur is not a typical tsar ha'ibur, but it has a much deeper meaning. The Ramban says, "Vatomer im kain lama zeh anoichi im kain godol tsar ha'ibur lama zeh anoichi mispaleles umisavo ala hahiroyon loshoin Rashi ve'inenu nochon." The Ramban says that Rashi's pshat is not correct, without explaining why. He doesn't say what his problem is. He just says ve'inenu nochon, and then he says v'Rabbi Avraham Omar, that the Ibn Ezra said Kisha alo es hanoshim. She asked other women, im ira lahen kocha, of when they were pregnant, they experienced something like this. Vatoymar no loy. They said no. Vatoymer im kain hadover v'haminik. If typical pregnancies are not this way, why am I experiencing what I'm experiencing? And the Ramban comments on the Ibn Ezra's pshat, and he says, "V'hine hakosuv choser ve'einenu sholem b'pirush hazeh." If so, the pasuk is missing words. V'hanochem be'einai, what I consider to be the correct pshat, ki omra im kain yi eli. If so, it will be, so I will experience. This is what I'm going to have to put up with. Why am I in this world? Halavai eineni. Halavai, I wouldn't be. Sha'omus. I should die. I never should have been born. Now, why does the Ramban say that Rashi's pshat is einenu nochen without explaining why? Mistama, because the onoichi, it says lama ze onoichi. Rashi says lama ze. Why did I daven and why did I want to become pregnant? But the pasuk just says lama ze onoichi, which means why am I? Not why did I do so and so. The pasuk doesn't allude to any doings or to any wantings, and that's why the Ramban says veinenu nochen. And what's his problem with the Ibn Ezra's pshat? The Ibn Ezra's pshat is somehow better because lama ze onoichi means, so why me? Why am I having such a pregnancy? But in order to say this pshat, you have to add into the pasuk that she asked other women how their pregnancies were, and they told her that this is really exceptional, and therefore she said lama ze onoichi. So that's why the Ramban says about the Ibn Ezra's pshat that the pasuk is choser ve'inenu sholem, because the pasuk doesn't tell us all the rest of what Ibn Ezra is telling us, and that's why the Ramban saying that lama ze onoichi really means, why am I? Lama ze onoichi. I mean, I wish I wouldn't be, because it was so painful that she said, I wish I wasn't. I wish I wouldn't be. Now, besides for what the Ramban asks on Rashi, that according to Rashi, the lama zeh is not about why am I, but what did I do? Why did I want? Why did I daven? There's another problem with Rashi's pshat, because Rashi says, "Vatelech lidrosh es Hashem." She went to ask, what's going to be the end? Ma yehei b'sofa. L'chayre, since if it's such a painful experience, I mean, what difference does it make what's going to be in the end? I mean, she's worried about the now. So how is the Ma yehei b'sofa going to take care of the pain? The emes is that the Ramban says that Vatelech lidrosh es Hashem. He says, no, it doesn't mean that she went to find out. He says lidrosh always means to daven. So according to the Ramban, she went to daven that it should become easier. But we see that the Ramban didn't attack Rashi, mitzad Rashi's pshat in vatelech lidrosh ma yehei b'sofa. The emes, it could be that the experience was so painful, and there's a halacha that if the ubor is a roidif on the mother, if her life is in danger, then we get rid of the ubor. So it could be that vatelech lidrosh es Hashem ma yehei b'sofa, that if she's not going to survive the pregnancy, then she should get rid of the fetus, and therefore vatelech lidrosh es Hashem according to Rashi. Be'emes, the psukim are mashma like Rashi, because that the lidrosh es Hashem is not about davening, but about finding out, because what was the response to the vatelech lidrosh es Hashem? The next pasuk says, Vayoyim Hashem lo, shnei goyim bevitnech, u'shnei lo'umim mimeyayich yiparedu. But it's hard to understand, how does this answer take care of the problem? If her problem is that it's a painful pregnancy, and she wants to know what's going to be in the end, and they tell her that, yeah, in the end, you're going to have 2 nations, 2 kingdoms. I mean, there's going to, how does this take care of the problem? The Orach Chaim actually says, Rashi Pirish, Im Kain, Godel Tsar Ha'ibur, Lomo Ze Anoichi Mis'ava U'Mispaleles Ala Ha'Iroyen, U'Pirusha Izali says, Ein Adas Maskemes Olav, Shetimas HaTzadekes Beheryoino L'Tzad HaTzar. First of all, he doesn't like the whole shot that she should, Rivka Imenu, should regret the pregnancy just because it's painful. Gam b'ma nocho daito be'emor lo ha'elokim beis goyim b'zeh lo yusa tzara. That's not going to take care of the problem. I mean, the pain is still there. But the emes is, the pasuk says, Rashi says, Rabbi Seinu say that one wanted to go to the base Avodah Zarah, one wanted to go to the base medrash of Shem Ve'ever. So we're not talking about a physical pain. but we're talking about a pain that comes from the hisroitzitz between the Pischei Torah and the Pischei Avodah Zarah. She didn't know that she's having twins. So she thought that it was one Uber that is, going this way and that way. So the Tsar was really a reflection of the existential Tsar of this Uber, who doesn't really find his place, who is going this way and that way and this way. That's really the Tsar of Vayisroitzitzu that she was experiencing. And Be'emes, we see from Chazal that Rivka's wanting to have children wasn't for herself, but in order to be Maimid Klal Yisrael, as it says in the Medrash, L'noichach ishtoi, melamed shehoyo Yitzchok shotuach kan v'hishtucho kan, v'oimer Rebbeinu Shalom kol banim she'ato noisen li yiu min hatzadekis hazu. The children that I will have, I want to have it through her. Af hi oimeres kol banim she'ato asid liten li yiu min hatzadik hazeh. So she didn't just want children, but she wanted righteous children. She wanted min hatzadik hazeh. She wanted children that will be like Yitzchok. And now when she's experiencing this hisroitzitzus between the Pischei Avodah Zarah and the Beis Medrash of Shem Ve'ever, so she's pained by this. She's pained by this. Okay, now I want to share a mahalach that my father said, Zechrono Livrocha, in explaining the Lama Zeh Anoichi and how this is a consequence of the Vayisroitzitzu Habonim Bekirba. Because, Avram told Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchok, Me'artzi umi moiladeti. And he insisted that he shouldn't take a wife, Mibnoi Saknani Asher Anoichi Yoshev Bekirboy. But l'chore, it's hard to understand why Avram wanted from his old country that a wife for Yitzchok should be brought from Ur Kasdim. L'chore, in Artzei u'Meiladetoi, they put him into the Kivshan Aish because of his beliefs. And even after he was miraculously saved from the Kivshan Aish, they still didn't respect him or accept him. And he had to escape from Ur Kasdim even before he was told Lech Lecha, as the Rishonim say. As opposed to Eretz Canaan, he came to Eretz Canaan. They received him b'koved malachim. I mean, they said, whether they meant it or they didn't mean it, but at least they said that. And he was Mekayim the mitzvahs Mila without fear. And Adarabah, even others were mal with him, as the Balei HaTosfos say in the beginning of Parshas Vayera. He had a following. Vayita Eishel b'Be'er Sheva, Vayikro Shom b'Shem Hashem Elokeil Olam. Rashi says, Al Yidei Oisoi Eishel, Nikro Shmoi Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eloka L'chol Olam. How? Because La'acha She'oichlem V'shoisim, he fed people. Amar Lahem Baruch Hu L'misha Achaltem Mishaloi. Yeah, he said, so they svurim, Atem Shemishali Achaltem. You think you ate from me? Misha Omar V'hoya Ha'olam Achaltem. And they would, and Mamela the Shem Hashem was Nisparsim. Agav, in as a Maimah Muzga, you see that Noach darshans for 120 years, he didn't make one Baal Tshuva. But Avram Avinu, the Rambam says, Alofim Urevovis followed him. I guess if you give food, you have more of a chance. Yeah, if you just give drushes, like I'm making a teva, the Mabul is coming, it didn't affect anyone. But Avram Avinu, we opened the restaurant, and but in any case, Avram Avinu, you see, he had a following. And in Eretz Canaan. So why is it that when he's looking for a wife for Yitzchok, he wants a wife from the old country where he had to run away from, where they roidifed him, where nobody accepted him? So the Ran in his drushes, and drushes are Ran, Drush Hey, he explains that Averis and Deois Koizvois are not hereditary. I mean, but character traits, midos, children yarshin from their parents. And therefore he says that in spite of the fact that in Artzay or Meladatoy and Ur Kasdim, in terms of their faiths and beliefs, they were much worse than in Eretz Canaan. but he wanted a wife for Yitzchak from Ur Kasdim, because in Midas and in Tchunas HaNefesh, the people of Ur Kasdim were better. By the way, there's a Mishnah in Ovis, Perik Beis, Hu Hoya Moina Shvachon, that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai spelled out spoke the praises of his 5 Talmidim. By the way, you see, a Rebbe should praise his Talmidim. I mean, sometimes Rebbe's think that it's their role to put down the Talmidim, but no, Hu Hoya Moina Shvachon. But see, he says about one that he's a Yerechet, about the other one that he's a Barsud She'enei Ma'abed Tipa. But about one, he says, about Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, he says, Ashrei Yoiladetoi. Lucky is the one who gave birth to him. So, what is he saying? So the Rav says, Koloima, that he's Mu'ushor b'midois toivos, and whoever sees him says, lucky is the mother who gave birth to him. So how does the Rav know that this is about midas toivos? It works out with this Ran, that midas toivos come from the parents. And therefore, Ashrei Yoiladetoi is something that you say not for somebody who's this or that or the other thing, but somebody that has midas toivos is Ashrei Yoiladetoi. Umemela kum tois, that this is what the Ran says. That's why Avram wants a wife for Yitzchak from Ur Kasdim. Now, you know, one of the character traits that we find that Yidden have is ki am kshei orefu, the stiff-necked. Chazal say in Pashtas, I mean, we look at it in negative. That's how it appears in the pasuk originally. But Chazal say in Beitzah Daf Chafei, Yisrael azin sheba umais. Yisrael are az. The Gemara says it as a mila. Before we see that the thing is that the roots of this character trait are also from Ur Kasdim. As we see in Ur Kasdim, that a father had no rachmanis on his son. He put him into the Kivshan Eish because he deviated from his faith. Not only that, even after the nace happened, and Avram came out of the Kivshan Eish alive, his father's faith wasn't shaken at all. Terach remained in Avodah Avodah Zarah. He wasn't the Spol B'chlal. He's his way, and the father remained his way until Avram had to escape from Ur Kasdim. And this is totally different than the character of the Canaanites, where you gave them a little food and they were already willing to bench. They were easily influenced by Avram Avinu. So it could be that in spite of that it's true that in terms of being mashpia on the masses, Ur Kasdim was a much better place to live. But when Avram Avinu wants to build the base Yisrael, he's looking for people that are not easily influenced. Adarabah, he's looking for the character trait of Kshei Oref. Like his father Terach was a Kshei Oref. He wasn't the spoil from the nace. He's looking for Kshei Oref. Why? Because a Kshei Oref, it's much harder to convince. It's much harder to win over. But once you win him over, the pshat is you have him forever. And the base Yisrael will have a kiyum. And that's what that the Klal Yisrael needs, that once they'll know the truth, al yevosh mipnei hamaligim olav. And even when they'll see derech rishoyim tzalecha, even they will see the success of the rishoyim, they'll see nivnu oisei risha gam bochenu elokim vayimoleitu, as the psukim say in Malachi. They won't be nispor. Yeah, they'll stick to their guns and they'll be kshei oref. Like the Ramban says in Parshas V'eschanan on the pasuk, Loi mi rubchem choshak Hashem bochem. Not because you're so many. The Ramban says, what's choshak? Choshak shenikshar b'kesher amitz. Choshak is a lotion of v'chashukehem kesef, which means that it's totally knotted together and attached. V'omar hatam ki me'ahavas Hashem eschem bocha b'chem shero eschem ruyim li'isaiv lefonav. He saw that you're worthy of being loved by him. V'nifchorim lahavam, to be chosen for love mishar ha'umos. V'lo yizkir b'zeh tam rak ha'bechira. It doesn't say any reason. It just says he chose. And he says, Ki anifchar lo oyhev, whom does a lover choose? Hayodua lisboil es oyhavoy b'chol habo olav mimenu. somebody that's willing to tolerate the one he loves, no matter what he does to him. That's what defines Emesa Ava, the willingness to suffer for the one you love. Yisrael ruyim lekach mikol K'moshe amru, Yisrael azim hein. Azim sheba umas. Ki yamdu loy b'nesyonis. O Yehudi o tzoluv. It's not clear what this expression means. Either you have the choice of being of being a yid or being killed, being crucified, or it means a yid or follow the one that was crucified. And if you will want to remain a yid, you will be killed. In any case, so we see that the tchuna of kshei oirif is essential for the survival of the Jewish people. I mean, the Rambam says in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, as we said, that Avram Avinu in Perek Aleph Hilchos Avodah Zarah, that that Alofim were Revavos were in the scarf to Avram Avinu, but where are their children? Where are their grandchildren? Where are the generations that came from them? Vaistois, that they weren't Kshei Oirif, but because they were Canaanites. But that's why Avram Avinu wanted something long-lasting, and that's why he chose somebody from Artzi Moiladati. So it's interesting that we're saying that actually the fact that Terach was such an action, and he didn't give in to Avram Avinu's emunah, even after he came out alive from the Kivshanei, was saying that that's a maila. Shtickle interesting. But Be'emes, it's a mefurish pasuk in Yirmiyah, because in Yirmiyah, capital Beis, it says, Kishtayim rois asu li'ami. 2 evils my nation did. What are the 2 evils? Oisi ozvu mikor mayim chaim. They abandoned me, the source of living waters, lachtsoiv lohem ba'oros nishborim asher lo yochilu hamayim, to dig for themselves ba'oros of mayim, cisterns of water that will not contain water. So what does it mean, shtayim rois? What are the 2 evils? Rashi says, Im heimiru yir osam b'yira kayotzeba. If they would exchange one avodah zarah for another avodah zarah, yesh kan roa achas, that's 1 evil. Achshov she'oisi ozvu, shani mikor mayim chayim, lolechas achar ha'akum harishtayim rois. So Rashi says, Klor, that if one abandons his avodah zarah for another avodah zarah, that's already 1 evil. The evil of Klal Yisrael is that they not only left an avodah zarah for another avodah zarah, they left me for avodah zarah. That's the Steinroy. So you see, Klor, that the lack of loyalty, even to an avodah zarah, is a chisar. Loyalty, sticking it out in all matzavim, that is a maila, even if it's for an avodah zarah. And Be'emes, it's muchach that's the taich of the pasuk Shtayim rois, because it says earlier, 2 psukim earlier, ha'heimer goy Elohim, v'heimer lo Elohim, v'ami heimer kvoidoi b'lo yoel. It says, has a goy exchanged his God, and they're not genuine gods, and my nation exchanged his glory for something that's worthless. So you see that changing one avodah zarah for another avodah zarah is already an avla. You know, in the end of Parshas Noach, it says, "Vayomos Horon al pnei terach ovid be'eretz moiladetoi b'urkastim." Horon died during the lifetime of his father Terach be'eretz moiladetoi b'urkastim. So Rashi brings a midrash agoda yesh oimrim she'al yedei oviv meis, that his father brought on his death. How did Terach bring on the death of Horon? Shekibel Terach al Avram b'noi lefnei Nimrod. Terach complained about his son Avram in front of to Nimrod al shekites es slomov, because Avram Avinu broke his avodah zaros. So Nimrod hishlichoi lekivshon ha'esh. Nimrod put Avram Avinu into the kivshon ha'esh. V'Haron yoshev v'omer b'libo. Haron was sitting and thinking, Im Avram noitzeach, if Avram will be victorious, will emerge from the Kivshon Ha'esh, ani mishaloi, I will join him. V'im Nimrod noitzeach, ani mishaloi. If Nimrod will win, Avram Avinu will be burned to death. I mean, I'll be from Nimrod's chsid. Ukshenitzel Avram, when Avram was saved, Amru Haran Mishel Mi'ata. They said to Haran, so what do you think? Amar Haran Mishel Avramani. I am a follower of Avram. Hishlichu lekivshan eish v'nitzraf. So what Pashup Shad is that since Haran wasn't really a believer, and it was dependent on who's going to come out victorious, so he didn't have enough of a schus to be saved from the kivshan eish, and therefore Haran lost his life because he wasn't on the madreg of Avram Avinu. But in the Targum Yonis Menazil, there's a different version of this midrash. It says, "Ubechein ispelig liba de Haran lemeimar." Haran's heart was split in two. Yeah, his heart was divided, and he said, "If Nimrod will win ahom in siyate, if Nimrod will win, I'll be from his company. I'll be from his people. V'ilu nitzach Avram ahom in siyate." Now the katchomun kol amamaya dahavu tamon deloisholta nura ba'Avram. Yeah, and then everybody saw that the fire wasn't shoylet on Avram, etc. Nofles eshisa min shmaya meroime v'gamarte u'misharan. At that point, a fire came down from heaven and burned Haran. So it's not that Nimrod put Haran into the Kivshan Eish, but a fire came down from heaven. Now the question is like this: all the Ur-Kasdamites, they didn't even consider a possibility of following Avram. And we see that even when Avram came out victorious, they still remained Avodah Zarah. Haran seems to be at least better. He said if Avram comes out alive, he's going to join Avram. So why did he get this einish that a fire came from heaven and burnt him? I mean, the Anshe or Kasdim weren't burned. And only Haran, who had a shtickle tzad that maybe Hashem hu Elokim, he got burned. So you see this, you saw that somebody who's an opportunist is worse than somebody that believes in the wrong thing. I mean, they stuck to the Avodah Zarah even in face of the greatest challenge. They just saw a nace happen to Avram Avinu, and they still stuck to their beliefs. But so they're not upgefrekt dimension. They're take oivdei Avodah Zarah, but they still have a schus hakiyum. But Haran, who's tam an opportunist, who says if Avram comes out alive, I'll beat his people. If Nimrod wins, I'll be from his people. He take an Eish min hashamayim came and destroyed him. So now my father continued that since the basis of the Bechira in Rivka was the fact that the Ur-Kasdim people were stiff-necked and they stuck to their guns and they didn't give in to influences. So now that Rivka sees Vayisroitzetzu habonim bekirba, and she thinks it's one baby, and he's going. When she passes a base medrash, she wants to go to the base medrash. When she passes a base avodah zarah, he wants to go to the base avodah zarah. So she says, "Lama ze onoichi." Why did they have to get me to produce such a child who lacks a backbone, who's always wanting whatever presents itself before him, and he has really no derech and no shita and no kashius oirif? They could have taken a local girl from Eretz Canaan. They didn't need to bring me from Ur Kasdim. So vatoimer imkain lama ze anoichi. But so vayomer Hashem lo shnei goyim bevitnech u'shnei lo'umim ima'echi paredu u'lo'im elo'im yemotz v'rav yavitzor. Don't worry, it's not one child that goes this way and that way. It's two. One will be a tzaddik gomer and one will be a rasha gomer, and you're taka producing what you meant to produce. Anyway, so that's the thing. So we have.
I'm going to Mincha now, but could you mention Reb Aaron and Reb Nosson as the yahrzeit?
Reb Aaron and Reb Nosson, Reb Aaron Reb Shnei Zalman, and Reb Nosson Meir. Reb who? I don't remember his father's name. No. You live in Lakewood all your life and you don't know. Anyway, yeah. So well, what am I to mention? I mean, I'm a bizoin for them. I should mention them. But Rabbi Kotler's yahrzeit is today, and Reb Nosson Wachtfeugel, so who was the mashgiach in the Lakewood Yeshiva, it's also his yahrzeit today. But look, if you think about it, I mean, a man like Rabbi Kotler really represents the city of Kshei Orif. I mean, he came to America. I mean, he was a tzabroch and a tzaklapte. I mean, Rosh Yeshiva who actually built a massive yeshiva in Europe. I mean, the Chanukas Abayis of the Kletzka Yeshiva was, I think, in 1930. In 1930. And it was a major happening. I mean, it also shows you the unbelievable thing that after the First World War, when the whole Klal Yisrael fell apart, I don't know if you have a musig. I mean, what the First World War, which was at that time the Great War, that it totally destroyed the Yiddish Kehillas across Europe. I mean, today we only think about the Holocaust, but at that point, I mean, besides the hundreds of thousands of Yidden that were killed, the spiritual level of Yidden went down. I mean, there were thousands of agunas that the husband just left them. There were thousands of people that stopped wearing tefillin. I mean, it was a total destruction. And during that, and the whole legacy of yeshivas that we have today is be'ikr from the tkufa of between the two wars. Be'ikr from the tkufa between the two wars. When several Yidden went to Be'ikr the Alta from Slobodka and others, and they mamish built a whole new structure, a whole new infrastructure, and they built yeshivas. So I'm saying Rabban, I mean, had the Chanukas Abayis of his yeshiva in 1930 in Kletsk. Yeah, you know, some as an aside, that Rebbe Zalman came from Eretz Yisrael to Kletsk to the Chanukas Abayis. At that Chanukas Abayis, he said to Rebbe Yudel Finkel, you know, it's a pity that the Brisker Rov is sitting in Brisk, and he doesn't have Talmidim. And you know that the Brisker Rov has a lot to say. And if he would have Talmidim, he would develop, and he would develop the Talmidim. I mean, he has so much to give. And he said to Lezer Yudel, and you know, if you'll send some Bachrim from the Mir to learn by the Brisker Rov, they'll come back to the Mir, they'll raise the level of the Mir Yeshiva. And that's what happened, that Rebbe Lezer Yudel sent a group of Talmidim and then another group of Talmidim. All the Gedolei Mir learned by the Brisker Rov in Brisk. And they came back to Brisk, Rebbe Malin, all the giants of the Mir learned by the Brisker Rov. And the whole legacy of Brisk was created through that suggestion that Rebbe Zalman made to Rebbe Lezer Yudel to send Bochrim to the Brisker Rov and Brisk. Tells us for how one suggestion can change the face of history. But in any case, what I'm saying is that in 1930 was the Chanukas Abayis of the Kletzka Yeshiva. No, and within 10 years, everything fell apart. Everything fell apart. Rebbein came at Tzabrach and Yid to the United States. And he had the stamina. I mean, he had the drive, and he had the kashrus oirif to stand against everyone, because nobody in America believed that a yeshiva could be established, a yeshiva for just Torah Lishma. Like it's Yadua that one of the earlier Rabbonim in America told Rebbein that when hair will grow on my palm, that's when there'll be a yeshiva. In a yeshiva of not for making rabbonim, but a yeshiva of Torah Lishma. So it just shows you that one yid with kashrus oirif can make such a tremendous difference. And Mamela, so sometimes, listen, like everything else, you have to know when to apply it. I mean, kashrus oirif, when it's applied in the wrong place, I mean, avad is a tragedy. And when it's applied in the right place, it's a blessing. And to know the difference, have to have a little bit seichel. Sometimes it's more dakasdik. You have to have more than a little bit seichel. But if you don't have it, you could have at least enough seichel to ask somebody else that has a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? But you have to proceed with caution, like everything else in life. But it's important to know that if you are a Kshei Orev, you could also suffer from the problem of shabesh the kivin the all. The Gemara says that a mistake, once you make that mistake, it gets into you. So it's very hard to change. So you have to do it the right way. Because somebody that's a Kshei Orev, once he does it the wrong way, it's very hard for him to change. In any case, Rabbi Say, having said all that, is kumtois that I want to wish you all a good Shabbos.